All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the very first video of this series of working with Premiere and Blender to make a visual effects clip video. We're going to be making something relatively simple, and it involves uh, some real footage here of a horse and some visual effects here of a character. This character is simply in idle mode, which we'll talk about later. But the end effect is going to be that we take this real footage and we bring in a 3D character, tracking, shadows, lighting, all that kind of stuff, and a little bit of sound design. So this
Very
may
cautious, I have a
seem
feeling.
like a lot,
Just one of those cautious types.
but it's not too bad. So let's get started. Let's shut this down. And we're going to start with talking about Premiere. Now, Premiere is an editing program that I use to do almost all of my video editing, and it's a subscription service from Adobe. So if you don't have it and you want to use some other software, that's fine. A lot of things will translate the same, but we're going to use Premiere uh, for the video editing portion and the compilation of video and audio. Now, if you've never used Premiere and you happen to be getting it and you've come to this tutorial to find out, the very beginnings of Premiere, then this is the screen you're going to see when it starts up. Now, you might not have anything in your recents. I happen to have a few things. And actually, I should note that I'm running version 15.0 at this time. So if this looks different, it might be because your version is much newer and they've changed it. But the basics have been the same for quite some time with Adobe software. They have an opening screen. There's going to be a list, and you can open a new project or open a previous project. If you don't have anything in here, because I would click on this Tech Tutorials one to go into the tutorial we're going to get going on, then you would click New Project. Now, when you get a new project, it's going to give you this very basic, simple, easy window to look at. And you're going to pick the name of your project. You're going to pick the location where it exists simply by hitting Browse. Or if you're a smarty pants, you can put in your your URL of the path to the place where it's going to be, and then from there you're going to choose the render, the playback, the video rendering and playback engine. Most likely it's going to be CUDA, but in some cases it's OpenCL, and in some cases it's software only. That kind of technical information is available on Adobe site. The rest is usually just the default is just fine. The one thing that I would suggest if you haven't done it is make sure that your scratch disks, which is essentially the place where Premiere puts stuff kind of temporarily, make sure it is not on your C drive if you're on Windows. It's not on your root drive. So D is a second drive that I've got on my computer, and it's just the same as a project. Very, very simple. And that's about it. You'd hit OK, and you'd be done, and you'll get into the project. If you have opened up a project, but you haven't done much, or you've done that and you've closed it, then you would click on one of those entries in there, and that will open up the project in this window. Now, the window itself there's piles of layouts. Up here is the layout tab section. The layout tab section will essentially let you switch up the layout of the tabs. That'll then make it easier or possibly harder for you to do what you're trying to do. In this case, for editing, you've got your source window and your program window, and then the timeline's down here, and all your project stuff is in here, and a media browser is here, and effects are in here. But if you wanted to do effects, if you were very concerned about making sure your effects are easy to get to, well, you might go to the effects panel, layout panel of panels, and in here would be your effects and essential graphics, and we'll talk about this in the future when we need it. For now, this is a lot of effects stuff, so it makes it easy to drag it over into your timeline or onto your program monitor and do your thing. I happen to have my workspace, so this is the workspace that I currently prefer. So I have my project tab, and you can move these around like so. So I have my project tab here, my effects controls here, and effects in here. I also have a folder for my effects, which are my most commonly used effects that I use in videos that I make. Up here is Lumetri Color, which is a color correcting tab, Essential Sound for messing around with sound, and Essential Graphics for putting in templates or just making your own text or graphics yourself. Premiere is quite powerful. It's got a lot of things going on. So I'm going to leave this on Lumetri. This is in project. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the file. So if I have my Explorer here, if you're on a Mac, you just use Finder. But I'm just going to drag this into my project tab. Now again, if you're in editing mode or something like that and your project tab is down here, it's the same thing, just in a different location. So once you get using Premiere a little bit, you're going to want to have things laid out the way you're used to it. And in such a case, you'll just make your own workspace by hitting Edit Workspace. And anyways, we won't cover that. There's lots of tutorials that do that, but you just make your own probably. Now, once we've got this in our project panel here, we can double click on this, and any clip, any video that's in here, when double clicked, will go over to the source window. We can also resize these things if we want to make this bigger, because right now we're not using the program monitor. We can make this bigger and maybe make this a little bit bigger, and that'll allow us to see this in a little bit more detail. And you can hit play. You can go back frames, forward frames, all that kind of stuff. What we're going to do here is we're simply going to do the very basics at first here, is understanding what we're using Premiere for, which is currently simply cutting out a bit of video and bringing it in and then rendering it out. But we'll get to that in the next tutorial. But the very basics here is we get this into here. This is cut or used as is, and then you just drag it right into here to make what's called a sequence. Now the sequence is what you're going to edit in. When you get to doing editing and making videos and stuff, this is where you're going to be doing it. You're going to drag clips into here. You're going to drag your effects into here, your graphics into here, your extra sound into here, and this is where all the editing magic happens. And you can zoom out or zoom in. You can scroll along. So it's relatively intuitive. Just click on things as you go, and but we'll cover all this. So this is the very basics of what we're going to be using Premiere for. We're not going to do a lot of stuff just yet. To get through this series of tutorials, this is pretty much what you need to know. You need to be able to bring a clip in. You need to be able to bring it into the source monitor. You need to bring it or a piece of it into the sequence or the timeline to make a sequence. This is the easiest way to do this. So I'm just going to do the easiest stuff. Otherwise, you'd have to go into here and then this brings up a little menu that goes out of screen, unfortunately, but it shows sequence and a whole bunch of other stuff. But if you just do this, drag it into here, it makes this sequence right here. This is a sequence. If I double click this, we can rename it. If I double click this, it'll open it, but it's already open. So if I go ahead and close this, and it's not in my timeline, I can just reopen it. And when you do this, you can see that we now get our effects available. We can now change the temperature. So now that we're not working with the source, we can make this smaller. We can shrink this down a little bit if we wanted to. And then we can see what happens if we apply our color correction. We can do all kinds of color adjustments here. We can raise the exposure if it's too dark. We'll bring it down if it's too bright, contrast, highlights, all that kind of business. And then we get into other things like the creative side, curves, color wheels, and mesh, but we're not going to be doing any of this. It's not needed right now. We want to get through how to bring in footage, how to make a 3D character, how to track it, all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to cover the basics of how Premiere works. And we'll do rendering at the end. But this is where we got to get started. So let's end this one here, and I'll see you guys in the next video where we will actually get started on the process of making this clip, this skit, this little animation, 13 seconds of just fun. But there is a lot of stuff that we can talk about while doing it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.